Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Ask a Property Manager. This is episode number 56, and today is January 27th, 2021. We're coming to you live from Studio 2.0 here at Own Buffalo. I'm Andrew Schultz, Principal Broker of Own Buffalo, Inc. And on today's show, we're going to be talking about the federal eviction moratorium extension. We're going to be talking about some toilet troubles, removing a tenant from a lease. We're going to also speak to some questions from housing providers around the country and so much more. Before we jump into all that, we're going to go ahead and plug our social media. New episodes of Ask a Property Manager come out every Wednesday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern. You can catch those live on our Facebook page. You can also catch those the same day we upload the replay over on our YouTube page, youtube.com/ownbuffalo as well. Don't forget to check out our Instagram. We post content on there that doesn't find itself on the other platforms, kind of different stuff that we post there. And last but not least, don't forget about the Rent Prep for Landlords podcast. New episode coming tomorrow morning, Thursday morning. We're going to be taking a look at how to screen and lease to unrelated tenants, as well as the definition of normal wear and tear. We're also going to be discussing move-in and move-out inspections, so you don't want to miss that. New episode of the Rent Prep for Landlords podcast will be out tomorrow morning, Thursday, anywhere podcasts are heard, or over at rentprep.com/podcast. We're going to jump right into the news of the day here. This is actually from last Wednesday. I actually missed this one on last Wednesday's episode. This happened basically right after the episode aired. President Biden extends the national ban on evictions through March 2021. President Joe Biden on Wednesday extended the federal eviction ban through March 2021 with an executive action in one of his first official acts following the inauguration. The ban on evictions has helped millions of Americans struggling amid the coronavirus pandemic. The moratorium on evictions was set to expire at the end of the month. The move is one of a long list of actions Biden took after he was sworn in as the President of the United States, including an extended pause on student loan payments, rejoining the Paris Agreement on climate change, and rolling back various orders put in place by the Trump administration. By one estimate, 14 million Americans are behind on their rent during this crisis. In addition to extending the eviction ban through March, Biden is also expected to ask Congress to keep the eviction moratorium in place through September 2021. Research has found that evictions lead to significantly more coronavirus cases and deaths in an area. This is a time where it's not an overstatement to say that for many people, eviction can lead to death, said Helen Matthews, communication manager at City Life Vida Urbana, a nonprofit in Boston. Advocates say that extending the eviction ban is just a first step and that there also needs to be enforcement to make sure landlords follow the law. The existing moratorium is flawed and some landlords exploit loopholes to evict tenants despite the protection, said Diane Yentl, hope I pronounced that right, president and CEO of the National Low Income Housing Coalition, in a statement. No federal agency is enforcing the order's penalties for unlawful evictions. In addition, there are growing calls for the ban to be matched with adequate rental assistance so that the eviction crisis is prevented rather than merely delayed. So far, Congress has allocated $25 billion in additional rental assistance, but after months of record job losses, rental arrears may be closer to $100 billion. So that's that article in a nutshell. There's a couple of things that I do want to touch on here. First of all, if you're in the state of New York, we already have an eviction moratorium that supersedes or goes longer than this. Our current eviction moratorium here in the state of New York runs through May 1st, 2021. So if you're in the state of New York, this extension doesn't necessarily have an impact on you. That being said, however, asking Congress to keep the moratorium in place through September 2021, that's another set of circumstances entirely. I mean, even talking now, we're at a full year that we've been unable to operate our properties as we need to in order to ensure continuability of the ability to operate the properties going forward. Basically, we're kind of operating with our hands tied behind our back in some instances. There are a lot of tenants out there that are deeply impacted by this pandemic, and I'm not denying that fact. But there are also a lot of tenants that are choosing to abuse this, and there are a lot of people who are in a much worse situation as a result of this eviction moratorium. The problem I have with continuing to extend the eviction moratorium is that you are essentially creating your own self-fulfilling prophecy. We've been talking for months now about a wave of evictions when the eviction moratorium ends. By continuing to push the moratorium down the road, all you're doing is creating that self-fulfilling prophecy. Yeah, there's going to be a wave of evictions at the end of this whole thing because we haven't been able to do anything this entire time to operate our properties correctly, even in circumstances where we know that we have tenants that are just outright abusing the system. So that's my primary concern when you talk about extending the eviction moratorium. I think it needs to be a common sense extension where at least things can start moving through the court process and being heard. Right now, we're not even seeing that in the state of New York. So that's my primary problem with the eviction moratorium is, yes, you have successfully stopped people from being evicted from the property. However, you've created a whole new set of problems in that people feel invulnerable to repercussion right now. And it's not a good set of circumstances for the property owner at the end of the day. So that's my take on that. In terms of the rental assistance, there's been a lot of discussion, especially in a lot of the groups that I'm in on Facebook, with regards to where are these rental assistance funds, you know? I actually spent some time this was last week. I spent some time last week basically going to every rental assistance agency in the Western New York region and asking them the question, you know, okay, is there an availability for landlords to apply for assistance on behalf of the tenant? Because that's the carve-out that was placed in the most recent round of stimulus, the $900 billion stimulus. One of the carve-outs in there is that landlords can apply for the assistance on behalf of their tenants, which I think would go a long way in helping us to actually resolve some of these issues, because in some instances, tenants are just choosing not to help. Like we have some tenants that have been great. We have some tenants that have gone through the process. We've helped them get the assistance that they need. Other tenants are just choosing to stick their head in the sand or outright ignoring us. If we can apply on behalf of those tenants, I think that that will help stem part of this situation that we're dealing with now. But so far, from what I've been able to uncover, there really isn't any direct way for a landlord to apply for funds on behalf of the tenant. So hopefully that is straightened out here in the relatively near future. We can move on and hopefully be able to actually collect on some of these rental assistance funds that are out there. So I will update that. I know that's obviously the top of everybody's mind right now. We will keep our eyes on both the state of New York eviction moratorium as well as any federal eviction moratoriums and updates to all that stuff. You will find more videos on that as things develop, so stay tuned to our channel for that. All right, on to our next news article of the day. Existing home sales in 2020 hit the highest point since 2006, but listings are at a record low. Pandemic-driven demand sent total 2020 home sales to the highest level since 2006. Still, even the most avid buyers are bumping up against barriers in today's housing market. Record low supply and record high prices are limiting the exceptionally high demand. Closed sales of existing homes in December increased just 0.7% from November to a seasonally adjusted annualized rate of 6.76 million units. According to the National Association of Realtors, sales were 22% stronger than in December of 2019. And as unexpected as a global pandemic was, so too was the reaction of home buyers. After plummeting in March and April, sales suddenly began to climb. Total year-end sales volume ended at 5.64 million units, the highest level since '06 and far stronger than predicted before the pandemic. Buyers were driven by a desire for larger suburban homes with dedicated spaces for working and schooling. Home sales could possibly reach 8 million if we had more inventory, said Lawrence Yoon, chief economist of NAR. Mortgage rates should remain very low throughout 2021, although we may have seen the lowest already. Strong demand exacerbated what was already low inventory for home sales at the start of the year. At the end of December, inventory stood at just 1.07 million homes for sale, down 23% year over year. At the current sales pace, that's their typo, sales pace, that represents a 1.9 month supply. This is the lowest number of homes since the realtors began tracking this metric in 1982. Low supply and strong demand continued to raise the heat under home prices. The median price of an existing home sold in December was $309,800, a 12.9% increase compared with December 2019, and the highest December median price on record. Part of the sharp increase in median price is that home sales are stronger on the higher end of the market where there is more supply. Sales of homes priced below $100,000 were down 15% annually in December, while sales of homes priced between $500,000 and $750,000 were up 65% annually. Sales of $1 million homes were up 94% from 1 year ago. Steep competition for homes also has buyers making all-cash offers. First-time buyers made up 31% of total sales. They usually make up about 40% historically. It also took just 21 days on average to sell a home in December. It is unusual because every year during the holiday season, we would see days on the market increase, but not this year. So there's a couple points I want to touch on in this article. We've talked about the market here in Western New York several times, that there's a drastic lack of inventory here in our market. The last stat I remember seeing, which was a couple months ago, said that we were 15% lower in inventory in 2020 than we were in 2019. So we're definitely experiencing that same basic premise. Low inventory across the market, an increase in purchase prices as a result of that. People are starting to make offers all cash or removing contingencies such as inspections and things like that. This is very much on par with what we're seeing here in our local market. One thing that I did think was interesting, sales of homes priced below $100,000 were down 15% annually in December, while sales of homes priced between $500,000 and $750,000 were up 65%, and then sales of $1 million plus homes were up 94% from 1 year ago. So I am kind of surprised to see that there's that much more activity in the high-end market. I'm curious as to why that is. I don't know as though I have a direct corollary to draw there. Sales of homes under $100,000 were down 15% annually. I think that really just stems from a lack of inventory. First-time home buyers made up 31% of sales. They usually make up about 40% historically. My only comment on that would be chances are there are a lot of first-time home buyers that are sitting on the sidelines just waiting to find a place. It's tough when you're in a multi-offer situation. Sometimes you're 10, 20 offers deep. For a first-time home buyer, that can be a very daunting experience. So, it's not a bad thing. It's one of those things that I'm glad to see that the market is very strong, especially in the face of a global pandemic. So that's good news. Something a little bit lighter in the news today. Tommy Hilfiger sells his $45 million mansion, reportedly moving to Florida. Fashion icon Tommy Hilfiger has finally sold his massive Connecticut mansion for $45 million while moving more than 1,200 miles down south. Hilfiger inked the deal in less than half a year, according to the New York Post. The 22-acre estate was originally listed in September by Sotheby's International Realty in Greenwich. Located at 30 John Street in Greenwich, Connecticut, the French Normandy-style mansion has 6 bedrooms, 7 baths, and 3 powder rooms. Hilfiger, 69, and his wife, Dee Aklepo, 54, lived in the mansion for around a decade. The pair were treated to upscale amenities, including a private pool, ample covered parking, and 6 fireplaces to keep warm during the winter months. There's also a koi pond, tennis court, decorative fountains, and multiple lush gardens and lawns. Stunning views of New York City's skyline and Long Island Sound can be seen from the property's highest point, what is known as Round Hill, which is 570 feet above sea level, according to Zillow. The impressive mansion was originally built in 1939 by award-winning architect Greville Ricard. Hilfiger reportedly purchased the mansion in 2010 for around $31 million, according to Realtor.com. The mansion is said to have been restored and updated. In September, the Wall Street Journal reported Hilfiger and his wife were moving to Florida for tax and personal reasons, which were not identified at the time. The pair are no strangers to the state either. Hilfiger purchased a home in Miami back in 2013 for $17.25 million. His Golden Beach mansion, located at 605 Ocean Boulevard, is currently listed for $23.5 million by realtor Fernando Pettinaroli, of Desert Platinum Realty. I need a pronunciation guide for pretty much every single name that I come across in news articles. It's bad. Not so bad when I'm reading them in my head, but when I try to pronounce them, it just turns into a mushmouth nightmare, and I apologize for that. So this was just a little bit of a lighter article. It's interesting to see that he's choosing Florida. Florida, of course, being an income tax-free state. At least state income tax-free, excuse me. There are certainly advantages to moving from a high-tax state to a low-tax state such as Florida, and obviously that's what Mr. Hilfiger is looking to take advantage of here. A little bit of humor for you this morning. I pulled this one off of one of our Facebook groups this morning. This is just quintessential landlord humor. I thought this was kind of funny. I wanted to share it with everybody. Hopefully you don't wind up with a similar situation in one of your rentals. Let's go ahead and jump into our questions from housing providers around the country, and we're going to start with this double question on toilet troubles. Okay, guys and gals, people, repair question. Tenant says the toilet sounds like it's filling, but hardly puts any water back into the bowl. I'm thinking toilet flush valve needs replaced. I think you're right. What are your thoughts? No, I haven't gone over, just trying to get my ducks in a row. Question number 2. Help, my young daughter accidentally knocked a small plastic bottle into the toilet as it was flushing. Now the toilet won't flush and I can't see the bottle anymore. What should I do? I tried plunging it, nothing. If I snake it, don't I risk pushing it down into the sewer drain pipes? Is that what I should do? Is there a way to pull or suck it back up? We'll answer both of those questions. We're going to switch over to just an internal diagram of what a toilet looks like. So the first question was talking about the fill valve. If you're looking at the right side of the image there, you can see the shutoff valve, the water supply line running up across the back of the toilet. That runs into the fill valve. That's what actually turns on and off the water flow into the tank of the toilet. So chances are, if it sounds like it's filling, but you're not getting any water, or you're getting a very slow stream of water, like a trickle, something's probably wrong with your fill valve. There might be some gunk in there, or whatever the case may be, but that's probably the repair that you're going to wind up doing. My recommendation to you is, if you're already pulling off the back of the tank, the top of the tank to replace the fill valve, you might as well do the flapper assembly and everything while you're in there. It just makes sense. Usually those things kind of go hand in hand. The fill valve will go, and then if you don't do the flapper, sure enough, a couple months down your road, you're back there because the flapper's now not seating properly or something like that. Going back to the second question with regards to the item in the toilet, you're going to have to go ahead and pull your toilet more than likely. And the reason I say that is that usually what will happen when something gets flushed down the toilet is it'll get caught in the trap or right before the floor flange, somewhere inside the toilet itself. Generally speaking, it doesn't pass by that flange and wind up in the line. Hopefully you're in that situation. I guess it depends on how large the item is. But my recommendation would be pull the toilet, see if you can locate the item inside the toilet, go ahead and set a new wax seal down and some new bolts, and hopefully that resolves your issue. If it's past the point where it's not in the toilet, you're probably going to have to call a plumber to snake that or try to retrieve it or whatever the case may be. More than likely, they're probably going to try to push it to push it out to the city sewer. Hopefully you're on a city sewer. They're probably going to try to push it. Trying to retrieve something like that is kind of a nightmare. Hopefully that's not the route that you have to go. Yeah, that would be my recommendation. Pull the toilet, see if you can find the item between the either in the trap of the toilet or before the flange, something like that. More than likely, that's where you're going to find the object. So good luck. Hopefully that works out for you. Removing a tenant from a lease. So what do most people here do when you have a situation where a couple splits up and one party wants to get off the lease? So I'll preface this by saying that leases are a legally binding contract, and I don't believe that you're obligated to remove anyone. You'll obviously want to speak to an attorney about this at some point before you go too deep, but check your lease first and foremost to ensure that all parties on the lease are jointly and severally liable for the lease obligation. Essentially what that means is that the tenants are obligated, whether they are living in the unit, not living in the unit, they're still attached to that lease, they're still obligated as a tenant on that lease. Typically in a situation such as this, I recommend not removing anybody from the lease. And the reason I say that is because if you remove one party from the lease, you have somebody else staying in the property, and then they turn around and destroy the place, now you're limited to being able to go only after that one tenant. My recommendation is wait until the lease expires, and at that point, sign a new lease with just the person who is going to be remaining or the people who are going to be remaining in the property. Make sure that you screen those parties to make sure that they qualify independently of the other person, and go from there. If you do decide that you want to remove someone from the lease mid-lease term, there's definitely a few things that you need to take care of. Number one, as I'd mentioned before, make sure the parties that are going to be remaining in the property qualify on their own without the party who's going to be leaving the property. Go through your full set of screening criteria just the same as you did the first time around. All parties on the original lease will need to sign a release document specifying who is remaining in the property, who is leaving the property, what date that person is leaving the property, and how the security deposit should be handled at move out. So getting an agreement up front from everybody as to how the security deposit gets handled at move out is going to be critical. When those parties all moved in together, you had basically a security deposit from all of those parties. You're going to need to know how to disperse that when these people actually do move out of the place. If you're going to be changing locks as a result of this change as well, it's a good idea to, number one, bill a tenant for that, and number two, collect those funds up front as well. That would be my recommendation. Typically, I would say just let it simmer. The tenants are still jointly and severally responsible for the lease obligations, which is a good situation for you to be in as the landlord. At the end of the day, if you do decide that you want to let one of the tenants off of the lease, make sure that you're following some sort of a procedure so that you have documentation to prove that you did it the right way and that you know how to handle deposit when it comes time to dispose thereof. On to our next question. 3D home tours. Have you used any 3D home tour apps for rentals? If yes, any recommendations? Yes, we do. I'm actually going to bring up this is iSpy 360, EYESPY 360 is the name of the company that we use to host our virtual tours. And this is one of our active rentals right now. This is a 4-bedroom home in Lockport, New York. It's actually an upstairs apartment. And you can see that it's pretty easy to navigate around here. You can spin around. If I want to go into bedroom 3, I just click on the arrow. I can zoom in, I can zoom out, I can scroll around, I can look up, I can look down. These are great. This is a great little tool if you are marketing a place, especially right now during a pandemic. Makes it a little bit more difficult to maybe do showings in some instances or something along those lines. It's really nice to have some sort of a way that you can display an apartment to somebody without having to physically meet them at the property if they're not comfortable or whatever the case may be. It doesn't have to be a 360 virtual tour. It could very easily be just a video walkthrough. It doesn't have to be a 360 virtual tour. We found that having it set up this way makes it very easy for tenants to decide before they even come out to take a look at a place whether or not this is the right property for them. And what that does is it saves time. It saves time for the tenant. It saves time for us as the property manager. If they know that they're not going to like the place, it makes it a lot easier for them to take a look and understand that they're not interested in the apartment before they come out to take a look at it. It saves time for everybody. 360s are great. You can even do just a very simple video walkthrough. I think I have one of that same apartment. Give me 1 second here. Let me see if I can. 7-4 good. You could even do just a very simple, walkthrough video, and we'll let that run for a second. I'll push it back on desktop here. So you could even do just a very simple walkthrough video and send that as a link. You can upload it to YouTube right from your cell phone. Very simple to film a quick walkthrough video. I'm gonna go ahead and pause that. Very simple to film a quick walkthrough video, and now you have something other than just still photos that you can show potential applicants. It's very easy to send them a link through an email, through a text message, through Facebook Messenger, to a walkthrough video, or to a 360 virtual tour. If you're going to go with a 360, you're going to have some cost of the camera and then obviously the hosting service. If you're talking about a walkthrough video, that can literally be done for free, but you do have some options there. That's our recommendation. If you're going to go with a 3D tour, we certainly recommend iSpy 360. They have been great for us. We've been using them for over a year now. I'm not exactly sure how. I think it's closer to 2 years now that we've been using them. We're not sponsored by them or anything. I just really enjoy their service. So, last question of the day, HUD VASH vouchers. Question, does anybody rent housing to veterans through the VA? Curious about the process, please message or post below. Thank you in advance. So we have had a great deal of luck with the HUD VASH voucher program in the past. It works, at least in our area, it works very similar to Section 8. As a matter of fact, it's the rental portion of it is actually administered by one of the Section 8 agencies in our area. And our payments do come to us through the Section 8 agency. The nice thing is the tenant also has a caseworker through the VA that works with them, checks in on them on a regular basis, makes sure that their needs are being met or whatever the case may be. And it actually acts as a resource for us as well. If we start to have a concern with the tenant or something like that, we also have the ability to call that caseworker and say, hey, I have a concern about XYZ. Would you mind checking the tenant? They're checking the next time you talk to the tenant, see how everything's, whatever the case may be. It's a good program. You do have to go through an inspection process, just the same as you would a Section 8 voucher, at least in our area. I would assume that it's going to operate pretty much the same nationwide. You do have to go through an inspection process, very similar to the Section 8 process. But honestly, it was a great program to work with. I think they actually picked up 100% of the tenant's rent. I don't think the tenant had any obligation at all. And we screened them just the same as we would any other tenant. So it was a good program, is a good program. We've had great success with it in the past. I would recommend the HUD VASH program to anybody who's thinking about sticking their toes in the Section 8 waters but just isn't sure yet. You know, if you're in a state where you can pick and choose, HUD VASH is very good. If you're not in a state where you can pick and choose, HUD VASH is still very, very good. It's a good opportunity. We've had great luck with them in the past. I would certainly give 2 thumbs up for the HUD VASH program. That pretty much wraps things up for this week's episode of Ask a Property Manager. Thank you all so much for watching. We love producing Ask a Property Manager, and you can certainly help us to improve. Drop a question in the comments either on Facebook or YouTube, and your question may be answered in an upcoming episode. If you enjoyed this content, or if I brought some value to your day, please do me a favor and hit that thumbs up button. YouTube and Facebook both push videos based on community feedback, so every like, comment, subscribe, and share helps us to grow and reach more people. We'll be back next week on Wednesday, February 3rd at 10 a.m. Eastern with another show you won't want to miss. I can't believe it's already February. It seems like 2021 is already flying. Thank you all so much for watching. We do appreciate you guys watching, and we'll see you next week.